Hello there everyone and welcome to round 6 of the CRS British Touring Car Championship. Today we're at the Silverstone GP layout and your pole sitter once again is Jaden HW in his BMW E36. I brought up second place on my 24 kilograms of ballast while MBG will get third. Vinnie Roberts in the second of the Team Dynamics BMWs would be fourth, and Tom would once again be fifth in his Listerine BMW. Joseph McKenna would get sixth, and Brett in the next of the 405s would be seventh. Fapster would put the first of the Mondeos into P8, and Toru in his Sierra would be P9. Method would get P10 in his Renault 19, and Scalaris would get 11th in his E36 Beamer. Rosty with his highest qualifying position would get P12, Dominancos in P13, Bowtie in P14, Alex Plunkett would get P15 in his Pinckney Motorsports BMW, while Clementine would bring up the rear in 16th in his Acura Ecos Vauxhall Cavalier. So off the line as expected, as we've seen for the many of the previous races here at CRS in this British Touring Car Championship, the BMWs were going to get a much better start than the front wheel drive cars. However, I managed to pull off a monster of a start in my front wheel drive to only actually lose out to Vinnie in the second of those Team Dynamics cars and not be too far behind Jaden coming into the first complex section. Of course, the mid-pack having lots of battles further through the field with Rosty unfortunately lagging into the side of Alex Plunkett, sending him quite a way down the grid. As we can see, a 2x2 pack still in grid formation further down the grid, which we will switch over to very shortly. As they would come down the back straight in 2x2 formation, this would be Method, Scalaris, Bread and Fapster in his Mondeo. They would still be 2x2 coming down into the left-hander, with Method managing to get the inside line now for the long right-hander, and Bread running out wide, turning in a little bit too much, which will clip him into the side of Method, and Scalaris would therefore inherit the place. This would be on board with MBG in his newly skinned Tamchester team Maxed Cavalier. He's created his own custom skin for the car. This would be on board with me. This would be a bit of a mistake on my behalf, just not expecting Vinnie to slow down as much as he did, which would cause me to run into the back of him. This would be on board with Joseph McKenna following MBG, who unfortunately fortunately would not be clipped by Tom, but I'm so unfortunate for Tom. He's had a number of negative races, I guess we could say, having some really bad luck so far this league. This would be Scalaris trying to go around the outside of Bread, but Bread holding his line very nicely to defend onto his position there. Cannot fault him in the slightest, as we see Fapster pull in for his drive-through penalty for his incident with Vinnie at the previous round. Once again, we can see Bread being very spatially aware, managing to defend still very nicely from Scalaris' attack into the last chicane. Now we can see Fapster coming out the pit lane here, just joining at the very tail end of the grid behind Rosty. Now this would be the front of the grid. Me and Jaden have pulled quite a big gap over MBG in his Cavalier. That would be Joseph, closely followed by Vinnie. Then this four pack of cars are still running together. Bread, Scalaris, Method and Toru now in a completely different order. I can see Bowtie, Tom, Dominancos, Rosty and then Fapster bringing up the rear of the grid. Vinnie would have a look down the inside of Joseph coming into this long right-hander, but Joseph was able to very nicely hold his car round the outside and defend well coming into the last chicane. On board here with Toru, Method would challenge for his inside, unable to get a manoeuvre done. Very good bit of defending there from Toru. We saw some very good racing indeed from here at round 7 in Silverstone. Round 6, round 7, one of the two. Anyway, we would see Bread try and dive down the inside of Scalaris, which was a successful manoeuvre. However, it would offset Toru, who would then outbrake himself, run into the back of Bread. On all that time, Scalaris was able to sneak up down the inside of Bread. An absolute amazing bit of overtaking action, taking as many opportunities as you can there, while Toru would have a look down the inside in his Sierra, getting the manoeuvre done on Bread. Also, Scalaris running very wide indeed. And then Method would also be able to get the manoeuvre done on Brad just because he ran slightly wide mid-corner. He was able to get the undercut, I should particularly say. And this would be watching me and Jaden. Here would have our battle for the lead. I would try and go around the outside into turn 3, which I almost managed to make the manoeuvre happen. And then coming round the hairpin, I'm still on the inside. I have to go down into first gear, which I really don't like doing. Spin up the tyres, and because of that, Jaden's able to get just as good of an exit as I do. And we're still side by side coming down into the heavy braking left-hand corner. He makes a slight lock-up and runs it wide, and then I manage to cut across for the hairpin right to be able to defend him off for the coming laps, which is very, very helpful for our championship position. So this would be on board with Fapster working his way back up through the field. A nice clean overtake there on Rusty as Rusty ran slightly wide coming into the hairpin. One of the weirder things that we've seen this league. This would be an onboard with Fapster, and now we're going to see the onboard with Dominion Cars. Very, very weird what happens. You'd expect the rear left wheel to lock up, when in fact it was the rear right which sends him off outwards, which I don't think we've really seen so far this league. Very interesting point that I thought we should bring up. Here we have the Tokyo Drift squad of Toru and Sculleris really pushing the limits of their rear-wheel drive cars here, as you'll see them do some sliding a little bit later on, but that wasn't going to be the focus point. The focus point was going to be Bread and Method in Bread's 405 and Method's Renault 19, as Bread was able to find a way past under braking to gain another position there. But Bread and Method would definitely be a battle that we would see a lot of this race. This would be on board with Tom trying to work his way back up through the field. He was gaining onto the back of Bowtie. Coming down into the braking zone, Bowtie would slightly outbrake himself, and that would allow Tom to sweep around the outside. A little bit of contact made mid-corner, but nothing major. And another place gains there for Tom, but that was not going to be the end of it, as Fapster caught right up to the back of this group too, and he was on an absolute charge to get back up through the field after his drive-through, going down the inside, or attempting to, at turn 1. Round turn 2, Fapster's still going to be on the outside. Bowtie's not going to give him as much room as I don't think Fapster would like, and coming down into the braking zone, Fapster barges his way through, and rightfully so, and he defends well into the hairpin, which allows him to keep the position that he luckily had gained. This would be once again back with Bread and Method. Method will get a slightly better drive out the last chicane and be able to definitely squeeze himself slightly up the way down the inside of Bread. Also, I have no idea what's going on with the pit straight building. Probably something due to Sol, but not going to touch on that. Bread would then try and attack back into turn 3, but slightly outbrake himself, which would put him down into the grass of the car behind. Not losing too much time though, as he is still able to stick with Method over the coming laps. Back with the Tokyo Drift squad, Toru and Sculleris once again really pushing the limits here, as they were just trying to break away from Method and Bread from their intense four-way battle at the start of this race. Back on board with Bread a couple laps later, he had managed to catch his way back up to Method, and taking a wider line to the hairpin on entry, flat out in first gear, trying to get the better drive out the corner, which is what he does, and down the back straight he is able to go down the inside of Method. Once again, a very tidy manoeuvre from Bread. We've seen some great racing from him so far this league, and with 3 rounds that we've got left to go, I'm sure we'll see some more. Bread though, he does run slightly wide mid-corner, and as we saw a repeat of earlier this race, Method was able to squeeze down the inside, but Bread is not going to give up though. He's still on the outside, coming down into the fast right-hander, but Method maybe doesn't turn in enough, or Bread turns in too soon, and that sends him round. But Bread, very quick reactions, manages to drop the clutch, I guess you could say, and bring the front back round, which will only take him to the back of that little group of cars there. What could have been a lot worse of an incident. This will be the battle for second. Jaden will run extremely wide coming out of the right-hander, and MBG would now be right with him to try and take second place away. They would come through the last chicane, but MVG wouldn't be close enough to be able to make a manoeuvre, but his chance would only come half a lap later when Jaden once again makes a massive slide into another right-handed corner, and that would allow MVG to swoop past, coming down into the S section of Maggots and Beckett's. Jaden then would try and hold on, but a rather interesting line would see him gain a time penalty. Now Bread on an absolute storm has worked his way back up to Fapster at this point, and as we saw earlier with Bread and Method, Bread and Fapster would be at it for the following laps, all the way up to the end of the race. A great little battle that we will see here. Trying to outbrake Fapster down the outside, it's not going to happen, but with that line that he's taken, he can carry so much more corner exit speed, and with that up to the hairpin, they are now right together once again. This would be looking at the back of Fapster's car. We'd see Bread gain a lot of time out of that one, but not got the speed or bravery, maybe one of the two combined, to be able to pull the manoeuvre off coming down into Maggots and Beckets. Once again, we'd see Bread and Fapster side by side into this corner. This time round, Bread unable to get the manoeuvre done, I believe, as they once again come down into Maggots and Beckets, but Bread not quite close enough to get a manoeuvre done. Once again the same corner, but this time Bread can carry the momentum. Runs it slightly out wide, but so does Fapster, and this time is on the final lap. So Bread has got, really, in his words, nothing to lose as they come down into Beckett's. A little bit of contact made, nothing too major, but then Bread gets calmer, runs it out slightly wide, and Fapster is able to grab the undercut on the corner exit to try and sweep around the outside. A little bit of contact made down the straight just to show Bread that Fapster is still there, and coming down into the right hander now with only about 4 corners to go. Fapster's looking everywhere he can to make a manoeuvre, and that indeed was the case very briefly, but Bread was able to get the undercut out of the corner, and now Fapster looking in for the last chicane, but Bread covers the inside nicely, and a good bit of defending there from Bread. So I would come across the line first for the second time this league to win the round 6 of Silverstone. Not too far behind would be MBG and his Vauxhall Cavalier to get his best place from the league so far. Third place would be Jaden after a bit of a recovery drive after his offs. The fourth place would be a very, very lonely Joseph McKenna, as he had literally no action all race, but fourth would be a brilliant points position for him in his Eni Carina. The next cars coming along would be Toru and Scalaris. Scalaris unable to get close enough to Toru in the closing stages, but it just shows how close they were running. Here would be Bread and Fapster just coming across the line now, which I believe is like 7th and 8th position or something along those lines. So that would be it then for round 6 here at the Silverstone circuit. Definitely one of the more fun races. We had a lot of good points brought up after the race. We had a good laugh as well, and that's really what it's all about. So thank you all very much for watching. 3 rounds to go. Me and Jaden are tied on points for the championship, so it's all to play for in these last 3 rounds, which I'll definitely keep you all updated on. So thank you all very much for watching, and goodbye.